Okay, we're going to talk now about communication. There are several different types of communication that you're going to utilize as a nurse. A lot of these you probably already utilize unconsciously or without that background information, but this may actually help you to improve your communication in some ways. So first of all, the process of communication, there's a message, there's a sender who wants to send that message to someone. The sender encodes that message. That means we put it into words and actions. There is the mode of message transmission that may be verbal, that may be through nonverbal communication, that may be email. There is a receiver, and then the receiver has to decode that message. There's a difference between receiving the message and the perceiving that message. There are also internal and external influences on how messages are received. And then there is feedback from the receiver to the giver, to the sender. So it seems like, I know that you've all had the experience when you thought you communicated something and the person you were communicating with understood a completely different thing from your communication. That's because of those differences from one person to another and how we encode and decode communication. And those things are influenced by our personal comfort level with communication, by our childhood experiences of communication, by our professional experiences of communication. That's going to affect the way that we encode and decode things. Okay. The modes and channels of communication. The mode is how the message is sent. Communication can be verbal, it can be nonverbal, it can be written, it can be electronic. Verbal communication. Verbal communication, if it's direct and visual, allows for some nonverbal to help interpret. If it is voice only, we're on the phone, we don't have, aren't able to see the other person, that actually decreases how much nonverbal communication can help. There's no written record of verbal communication. So if something's important, we should probably communicate it in some way that can be retrieved. Nonverbal communication is use of body language, facial expression, position. There are so many things that we unconsciously do and sometimes consciously do that communicate. A simple example of body language of nonverbal communication is nodding for yes, shaking the head for no. But what if I say yes, but I'm doing this? Do you want to go out? Yes. Do you see how sometimes there's some incongruence, and that can be really confusing? So is the nonverbal communication consistent with the verbal communication? Written communication is more formal and allows for a permanent record. So that's helpful if we're using, if we need to keep a record of something like a contract. Electronic communication also can keep a record. If you put it on the internet, it's probably there forever. The internet's forever, just know that. Until you want it. No, I'm kidding. But anything that is on the internet, it is possible that it will exist and be able to be found later, even if you don't want it to be. And some people have found that out to their detriment. So electronic communication can be either formal or informal. It allows for a record, but it doesn't allow for nonverbal behaviors to help interpret the message. The channel of communication is the direction. So communicating upward looks very different from communicating downward. We can communicate horizontally. Communicating diagonally is communicating with another department. So as a staff nurse on the floor, if I'm communicating upward, that might be with the charge nurse or the nurse manager. If I'm communicating downward, that might be with CNA. If I'm communicating laterally, that might be with the other nurse that's on the computer that I like to use. If I'm communicating diagonally, that might be with the lab. I'm going to communicate with the lab because I need them to come draw this blood already. Thank you. Most healthcare facilities also have another channel of communication that is the grapevine, where people there, there's always one person that goes from floor to floor to floor and knows everything and just takes it all over the floor. That's the grapevine. The grapevine tends to get things wrong because pieces get missed. Let's stop there, and then we're going to come back and talk about some ways to use verbal and nonverbal communication in nursing.